Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Cervello Live. Hope you're doing well. Hope you had an amazing Jubilee weekend. I certainly did. Really good. Although I did scratch my nose while I was at my sort of training boot camp on Saturday, which is a bit of a weird injury to have. I've never had a sort of damaged nose before, but all good and a really good weekend. Thank you for joining us today. And also, we've got an amazing special guest. We've got Mr. David Bell. David, how are you?
Good morning, Chris. Good morning, everybody. Yeah, I'm very well, thank you. Looking forward to this fun interview that we're going to be having, talking all finances and tech. Going to be great.
Yeah, I'm really excited about it as well. And before we get on to David's interview and talking about the amazing career he's had, the insight he can give us into technology, and I'm sure a wide range of things all the way in between. There's a few things that I want to share today that hopefully will be useful for you when it comes to achieving financial independence, building your own financial plan, and thinking a bit differently about how to use technology to manage money in a really good way. And first, I want to talk about clearly the biggest thing that's happened in the last sort of 20 years when it comes to technology, 20, 30 years, and that's the internet. And the fact that financial knowledge now actually can be accessed by anybody. Really funny. As a lot of you know, if you're watching this and you're a client of mine, my two girls are 18 and 10, and weirdly, and I don't know about your kids and grandkids, but weirdly, their personalities are really different. So Charlotte, who's the old one, is quite academic and loves to pick up a book and loves to learn. Sophie is a boss. Like, she knows her own mind, and she knows, and she's got this street smart sort of intelligence that's really clever. And I'll give you an example. And bear in mind that she's 10, so she's grown up with technology around us, where I think David and I have adapted to technology, but are probably at an age where now we're comfortable with it. But we've seen the changes throughout my life. And I was having a conversation with Sophie about her maths homework, and she said, I said, look, let me give you an example of why maths might be really important. What's 9 times 4? And she went to me, Dad, I can tell you that straight away. Alexa, what's 9 times 4? And that's the big change, isn't it? The big change has been the fact that knowledge is just out there. You know, it's available to us at the touch of our fingertips. So it's never been easier to get really good financial information to help us make good financial decisions. But there's been a challenge as well. And that challenge is it's never been harder to differentiate the noise from the facts. You know, there's so much information out there. Actually getting good quality information is increasingly more difficult. And I want to make something really clear. There is a difference between investing, because investing in its approach is actually quite boring. It's all about doing the right thing and getting consistent returns over the longer term, and speculating. And my approach when we talk to clients about this, who come to me and talk to me about Bitcoin or the latest thing that they think might be the next big thing, is actually have 2 pots. The majority of your money be super boring with, because that's the bit that's going to achieve your longer term financial goal, and make sure you're clear on that. But have a pot, if you can afford to, that's just about having a bit of fun and a bit of speculation. And that typically is between 5 to 10% of somebody's accumulated wealth. The majority of the money is used to achieve the longer term financial goal and invested in a really boring way, so you can just leave it and let it run, and you can have a little play and have a little fun with the remainder. Then you know that you've not got the fear of not achieving your own financial independence and financial goals, but also you can sort of potentially win big or potentially lose. It doesn't matter on that other pot. When it comes to that big pot, that investing pot for your future financial goals, there's a few things that you should really avoid. Firstly, anything that looks too good to be true, because it probably is. Secondly, investments where you're not protected by the right regulatory authorities. So any advice that we give, we're directly authorised by the Financial Conduct Authority. Anything we recommend is heavily regulated. And the reason for that is it means that you get a really high level of protection if things go wrong. So we want to make sure that you're fully protected. And we're personally, you know, as a director of a directly authorised company, I'm personally responsible for giving any advice that I give. And that's the other factor. If you're getting advice from somebody who isn't responsible directly, and there isn't a way to hold that individual accountable, I think you've always got to question the advice, because you're in a position where if somebody's taking responsibility for the advice they give, effectively they're accountable for it. So speculation pot is slightly different. When it comes to investing to achieve your financial goal, certainly that's something that you should definitely look at getting proper professional advice on. It's a really interesting one, because when I sit down with clients and we're building financial plans, or we're sitting down for a review, one of the things I'm really explicit about is talking about the downsides. Now, it's a bit of a weird situation sitting down and going, you know, half of a meeting with a client is having a conversation about what might go wrong, but actually it's really important to be explicit about the things that might go wrong, so that you can manage the relationship and make sure that people get over that time. One of my favourite stories is during lockdown 1. A lot of my sort of conversations, David, were around markets going down during that first lockdown. And a lot of the conversations I had were, Grace, you told me this might happen, and you told me we're going to be doing nothing, and that's exactly what we did. But having those upfront conversations about what we're going to do, you know, our fire drill, effectively, when things are a bit more volatile, is important up front. And if you're not having that conversation with anything you're going into, I'd question whether you're ready for that if and when it does go wrong. So really important that the downsides, even though it's something we don't want to think about, are super explicit up front. The other thing is ignoring the noise. And when I talk about the noise, if you've got a stock market tip, like an individual stock market tip from either the newspaper or a website, you know, or information, odds are it's already too late to invest in that stock, because the reality is those stock market tips don't come out as soon as the markets change. I'd suggest that you, when you're thinking about investing, and this is again for that core plan, for the speculative bit, if there's a company you like and you want to buy some shares in it, that might be a good move. But for the core element, the rules of investing are really super simple. Broadly diversify, keep the costs low, you know, globally diversify, make sure your money is spread across the world. And if you need any more information about that, Cervello produces a free guide called The 10 Rules of Investing. If you email me, Chris at Cervello FP, I'll happily send that to you, and we'll get that over to you, because they give you the 10 simple, clear rules that you want to be using for longer term growth on your money. Now, I suppose what I haven't answered is, where on the internet do I go to get really good financial knowledge, and where do I recommend my clients look at? And there's only one place really. It's www.meaningfulmoney.tv. Now, Meaningful Money is run by a guy called Pete Matthew, fellow chartered financial planner, amazing guy, somebody I've known for over a decade now. And the amount of content and depth of content he's produced, and again, fantastic quality content he's produced over a 10-year period, is amazing. So my go-to, and your go-to, I'd suggest too, would be meaningfulmoney.tv. Whatever format you want to learn in, you know, he's published a book, he's got amazing podcast content, and he's got loads and loads of really good, really simple videos on a range of different subjects. Take a look at meaningfulmoney.tv, because what Pete's done in terms of just building a really good base of of what is amazing. The other thing that I'd recommend, if you're considering something that you're not sure is legitimate or not, is the FCA website, www.fca.org.uk, and the bit that you want after that is Scam Smart. So if you just put FCA Scam Smart into Google, that will tell you either whether a company that you're thinking of has been complained about directly to the FCA and it's been sanctioned, and some of the broader tips that you want to consider when you're thinking about investing in things that you don't know are legitimate or not. So that's really important to do. One really important thing to bear in mind on that, just because they're not on the FCA register doesn't mean they're legitimate. The legitimacy bit comes from being directly authorised and registered by the FCA, because that makes them directly accountable. So that's really, really important in terms of getting knowledge of the internet, finding the right access, and just thinking about your financial plan in a situation of 90% super boring and just making sure it does the job, and 10% have a little fun, and just have something that's a bit more speculative. Next is the work that we do with clients in terms of using technology to build their financial plan. And effectively, the way that we approach financial planning is money is a tool. All money is a way to live the life you want. Before we started going live, David and I were talking a little bit about our summer travel plans. And that, for me, is what money does. Money, for me, allows you to spend time with the people you love, doing things you want to do, and making sure that you can do that for as long as possible. And often, a lot of clients come to me initially with the situation of saying, I don't know whether I've got the ability to do that for the remainder of my life. And our job is to say, yes, you've got enough money to make sure you're going to be okay for the remainder of your life, or there's some work to do, and if we do this and this, we can get you to that situation where you're fully financially independent for the remainder of your life. And we use technology to do that I'm just gonna share with you today. We use something called cash flow, and effectively what that allows us to do is build financial plans. And this is somebody who's building their assets. They might have a bunch of different sources of income coming in, but build their assets, and we can tell whether, if they build their assets to a certain level, they're gonna for this particular individual, they will run out. This particular individual is in a position where they're building assets, and effectively they're never going to run out of money again, based on certain assumptions. And we're using assumptions about investment growth and inflation and things like that. But effectively, that's somebody who's building their wealth and never going to run out of money again. And that's somebody who is definitely never going to run out, and has got a definite first world problem that they're going to have too much to pass on to their kids, and probably an inheritance tax bill to go with it. So the conversation I have with them changes from, we know you're never going to run out, but we don't want the government taking 40% of a chunk of your money. So what do we do about that? So effectively using technology to visualize somebody's financial plan. You know, I mean, for me, technology in my world is all about clarity. You know, often we don't look at a situation where we provide clarity to somebody's financial plan, and that's the scary bit. The scary bit is that I just don't know where I stand. I've got this stuff, and I just don't know whether it's going to give me enough. Using technology, using the tools to just say, here's the story your money tells about the life that you can lead, is really, really powerful. So cash flow, using technology as a way to tell a story about somebody's financial life is super, super useful. And then I suppose the other thing, and this is really interesting, because I'm a great believer in trying to really understand what our clients value from the service that we give. And one of them is just peace of mind. Our clients tell us this, and one of the most simple ways to deliver peace of mind to our clients have told us, is just keeping all of their documents super safe. So we've got effectively a service we provide to our clients where we keep all of their really important financial documents, all of their really important wills and legal documents, power of attorney, effectively in a digital safe that we store on their behalf. Now, why do we do that? We want to make sure that if we've got, particularly for our older clients, if we've got a situation where something happens to them, either death or a loss of capacity, we're the family financial planner. So we want to make sure that we're not only looking after them as an individual, we're looking after the next generation. And I've got a client, Veronica, who said to me the other day that knowing that all she needs to do is let her son know that we're on hand, and all he needs to do is get in touch with us to get access to everything he needs if anything happens to her, gave her real peace of mind. So I think it's really interesting in terms of that, using technology to actually deliver a really human solution and deliver peace of mind. I think that's quite good. And so safely and securely storing all documents, helping our clients with peace of mind is certainly one of the things that technology provides us as a business. And then I suppose the sort of broader thing is, what does financial freedom look like in a technological age? And it's one I am still thinking about and looking at, and certainly learning from our clients. Again, being financially independent is about using money to live the life you want. However, when it comes to building wealth, it's important to live the lives we want. And actually, if we can work from anywhere now using technology, and COVID has changed working practices for a lot of employers, I'll be interested in your thoughts, David, and the thoughts of our audience. How does that journey to financial independence and beyond now look like with technology in play? I don't know. What do you think?
Great questions. I've been listening, making so many notes. If people saw me looking down, I was noting. I made loads of notes here, which I will reflect on through our conversations, Chris, but also probably go back and look at this in a little bit more detail after our time this morning. I think that there's lots of questions you've just asked there to the audience and lots of information you've just shared. And I think technology is a wonderful thing. I think, if you go back, well, my journey started back in kind of the early 90s when I left school and set up my first business in tech. And if I look where I started and how things have changed over, almost 30 years now, it's been a big change. And as you said, Chris, we've grown up with it. So we've had to adapt to it. Some things that we've had to learn, but our children, I've got a 19-year-old son that's kind of gone through that. I've got a younger daughter as well, who's kind of just starting off at school. But they're born with the technology. The iPad is part of them. Logging into online banking. They've never been to a bank. I don't think my daughter's ever walked in the door of a bank. Old bank book, getting it stamped, all that sort of thing is legacy. So I think there's been so many great things that have changed for the better. And with the pandemic previously as well, I think a lot more people have adopted and taken on board technology and realized actually it can be a good thing. But there will be the controversial people out there. So hang on, there's also a bad side to it. And of course there is. Certainly when we're talking, looking after your financial freedom, your finances, we know things like security, scamming, it's a big thing. Maybe something we touch on in our conversations now, but you could have lots of money all locked away today, take the wrong turn, get pulled into a scam, which you wouldn't know about, and you actually think it's totally legit. And you could, and I use the words could, lose everything. I know people have lost tens of thousands of pounds, and they're not silly individuals. They're quite bright individuals, and it's normally those ones that get caught out.
Well, I mean, there's an element of bias actually to smart people who, we've all got the ability to make decisions that have a detrimental impact. And I think it's just it's a really interesting one with technology because I love it. I think technology has been the biggest empowering force over the past sort of 20 odd years. And it'd be interesting to see where it goes. But like anything innovative, it comes with a downside, doesn't it? And I think we're now in a position where the challenge we've got is technology is moving so quickly. How do we keep up? It's just that amazing stuff. And it'd be interesting to see what the next 20 years looks like. So we'll definitely talk about that. But let's start at the beginning. Tell our audience a little bit about you.
Yeah, so as I mentioned earlier, my story begins it begins before the early 90s, but we'll start there. I left school. I loved tech when I was at school. I suppose to a degree, I was a little bit of a boffin at school. I studied hard, worked hard, left with some, reasonably good grades. And I had the opportunity to go on. We wasn't forced at our age to go on to further education. Yeah. But I decided, you know what? I want to run my own business, because I was already dibbling and dabbling prior to leaving school, fixing hardware, taking things apart, trying to repair them, failing at times. My dad will tell you stories where I took things apart and never put them back together again, but I was learning all the way. But it really started where I decided to set up my own business. And that was making, building, repairing, fixing computers, PCs as they were, the old 286s and 386 days.
Right, just out of interest, what was your first? Because I mean, my dad was into computers, so I was always like surrounded by computers. I remember going to like these big exhibitions in Olympia, and being, and again, it felt like, I mean, it's like watching. Do you remember Tomorrow's World?
Yeah, absolutely.
It felt like this is the future. And you look back at an old, and again, they're all available on YouTube now. You look back at an old episode of Tomorrow's World and you go, what were we thinking?
They're quite accurate. Some of those episodes, you look at them and actually some of the things, they're not quite what they planned, but they're not far off.
Yeah. But you look at, I mean, I'll tell you what the other thing, like you look at 60s sci-fi and actually you look at Star Trek, and some of the ideas that technologists had about developing technology came from those shows, didn't it? So, it's a bit of a sort of interesting relationship. But what was your first computer? Because I had a Commodore 16. I was a Commodore guy.
So I remember it quite clearly. I was very young, but my first computer was a BBC Micro.
The little owl.
Yes, that's it. Yeah. And I remember learning at a young age to program BBC Basic. I'm not a programmer today either, but it was one of those things that you could make a rocket launch and it would kind of go up in blocks and it would explode. And that took probably days, and all you're doing is just putting in very basic code into the operating system. But then I went on and I got a Commodore Amiga, and then it went to kind of a Windows, DOS based, then Windows 3.11 or 3.1, 3.11.
So the business career started sort of fixing, building computers and stuff like that. Where did it move on from there?
So very quickly, we got the business and we realised that the consumer market wasn't a market for us. It can be quite challenging at times. Nothing wrong. I'm a consumer. I buy things, but we know consumers need a lot. So we found the business world was where we needed to be. So local businesses, and that grew out. So we were based in Essex, and we grew that business over the next 4 or 5 years to be kind of a well-established provider of software services, management solutions as well. So not only we're now building the hardware, we're also looking after it, supporting it, contractually based and stuff like that. But the big tipping point for us is where the business changed dramatically. This was our pivot back in 1999, is that a customer comes to us and said, we've got 2 offices, a mile and a half apart. We want to connect those for all our data. So that's moving their network traffic and their telephony. Now, in that day, you probably remember ISDN lines, dial up for internet access, lease lines, which were an equivalent of fixed line, which was very expensive. But we did the research, we installed a point-to-point wireless link, which basically moves the information through the air. We know Wi-Fi now. We're all using it probably on our laptops, our mobile devices, but this was proprietary-based technology. Not cheap, £20,000 it was for that client to have that link installed. And we found something niche. And we realized that there wasn't anyone else out there doing it in a commercial space. Mobile operators from a mobile phone network, yes, but commercially, no. So what happened is we pivoted into that. And actually, we cut a long story short, over the next 5 to 7 years, we grew that into an international business. We had offices in South Africa, Cape Town, Johannesburg, North America near Detroit, and also in the Middle East with UK and Essex being our head office.
Yep.
We were Motorola's biggest application partner. Most people know Motorola from the flip phones and stuff like that, but they had a division which was all about the connectivity. And we become very well known, and it led us into places that would never have gone as an IT company. Dell, Apple, big motor franchises, Ford, Caterpillar, some really big organizations. Harrods Group.
It was all about them connecting, using the mobile network to connect data.
Well, not mobile, having a private network which they owned and we built and managed on their behalf. And it was about moving their telephony, so their voice, and all their computer data, so their network traffic around. It means that they could have one central operations site. Bear in mind, this is the day where the cloud, which we call it today, didn't really exist. So you had your own servers on premise, and then you needed to get everything talking back to that point. Things have changed now. And yeah, we did some really weird and wonderful projects. I mean, we did dolphin migration. So we had someone that put the tags onto the dolphins. We collected that data and then sent it back to the university on shore. So that was using wireless technology. We did the first tidal turbine in the Irish Sea, and that was generating electricity, but it was unmanned. It needed to be monitored. So we had the connectivity that took the traffic off the tidal turbine, off the actual frame, and sent it back. We did gas and oil rigs in the Black Sea, in the Baltics. So the projects were all very diverse. But in some cases...
And that sort of connectivity we take for granted now, don't we? But as you say, like, there was a period of time not that long ago where it was a lot, the environment was different.
Absolutely. Today, I mean, don't get me wrong, people are still using that type of connectivity. Free space radio links and stuff like that, high-speed data links, using licensed and unlicensed radio products. So there's a lot of it still out there. And certainly for rural connectivity where you can't get a physical connection to a cable to. So it was I did that now I had a business partner, 15, 17 years, I think, but I had a midlife crisis. 2014, it was like, do you know what? I've loved the job. It pays well. We've done some fantastic projects. We've helped so many people. But I set up a business which was run in the background called Symbok, which is a business consultant, tech consulting. And it was time to leave the kind of the connectivity world and move into the more consulting world. So I sold out of that business.
So help me. I mean, there's a couple of questions that I've got. Now, we want this, I mean, because I know that you're a fan of having fun in your business and doing that, and I'm a firm believer in that as well. We only work with people we like, because life is too short not to, I think. Absolutely. What do you do for fun? What do you do for...
So, well, big thing for me, I love motorsport. I've been around and gone to quite a lot of the Formula One Grand Prix. I've still got a few to tick off the bucket list to get to, but I've gone to China, done pretty much most of the European races. So that's a big thing I like to follow, as in sports side of things. Travel is a big passion of mine, like you were talking, Chris. I like to get out there, see the world. Hence, it links to Formula One as well. Traveling around, going to the places.
It's not a bad excuse, is it?
Yeah, well, of course, it's not a bad excuse.
I've got to go to Abu Dhabi because I need to see that race.
Yeah, exactly. So you get to see the world, learn the cultures, and also get to see something you're passionate and enjoy and follow. I love to watch movies when I get the time. I'll be honest, less now than ever, for various different reasons. Young family, they take the devotion at most of the time. But my escapism is to sit down, put a good movie on, and at that time, for that hour and a half, 2 hours, I'm locked into that movie. But as I say, probably once a month thing now, a good movie.
Okay, so what movie do you think has aged the worst from a technological perspective? And what has actually got it pretty much spot on? So
if I talk from a technology point of view, and I love it's the four of them in the box set now, but it's The Matrix. Watching that over 20 odd years ago when it was first created, you can watch that now and you could say it was still filmed in the last year or so. Yeah, it's still very, very good. And I think it's nowhere near where we are, but it does ask certain questions in the back of our mind, whether you want to be kind of a little bit sci-fi based. So for me, that's a great movie from that perspective. I think that it's stood the time a test of time, and still is. Even though the last one wasn't that great, I'll be honest. The fourth one let me down.
I haven't. The more recent one. I mean, the more recent one, it just shows how. I don't know how Keanu Reeves is doing it, but he doesn't seem to age that.
No, he doesn't. It looks like he did that.
Well, as the rest of it, I was like, sorry, I'm like, you fit mid-50s. You're doing all right, Keanu. Can I have your secret? But I think you're right. I think as we get to rely on technology more, the Matrix does raise some interesting conventions about how we communicate as a society, I think.
Yeah.
And that element is interesting.
Yeah. And absolutely. And I think that is the key there. It's not about, is the world we live in real? Okay, maybe it's not, maybe it is. Who will know? Maybe one day we'll find out. But it's all about that human interaction. And that's where technology is great. It allows us to have all these other streams to communicate, whether it's through messaging platforms and services, email, video conferencing. Everybody now is quite comfortable with using online video conferencing, thanks to one of the good things that has come from the pandemic. People have got familiarized with that, and it's probably saving lots of travel miles, lots of time, because people are now communicating through video conferencing or similar platforms. But let's not take out the human interaction. I've probably no different to you, Chris. I've got on planes. I've flown around the world to shake a hand to finish and sign a deal, because it needed that face-to-face in the room, physically touching someone, a handshake, sharing a pint, sharing a coffee, having that face-to-face communication was key to making that project.
And I think the world of work is going to be interesting moving forward, isn't it? Because I'm really enjoying the fact that actually technology is allowing me to be a lot more efficient, but I still like to have that direct face-to-face engagement. I remember a few years ago, and this was before COVID, I had a brand new client. We do some work with some guys out in the Middle East. So we've got a few clients who are part of the expat community, and I've got a client who said to me, "Look, can we have a Zoom call, see if we can get on?" And it was really funny because I wasn't in my new office, I was in my old office, which was at a sort of a big window, and it was literally pouring down the rain when we had this Zoom call. So I'm on my computer, and sort of the client comes up, and it's like 40 degrees out in where he was, and he had a really interesting job, because his job was to build tube lines. So basically, he did loads of work in the London Underground, and he travelled the world building tube lines. And he was out in the Middle East doing this. So I said to him, "Look, let's have a chat. Let's see if we can engage and get on." Had a quick conversation about what it was like. It was like, "Look, can you do me a massive favour? Can you just turn your laptop around so I can see out the window?" And he turned it around, and there's a swimming pool and stuff like that. I went, "Have a look at mine." And I just turned, and it was just literally sheet rain coming down like that. And he laughed, right? And I thought, "You're somebody I can work with." But weirdly, we got to the end of the conversation and went, "Look, think I can add a lot of value and help you. Think you're going to get like the relationship, but actually, should we not engage yet?" And he said, "Well, why not?" I said, "Well, look, you lived in Milton Keynes. You're back in the UK in 3 weeks. Before we start the relationship, should we just meet? Even if it's just to do the 10-15-minute chat to get organised, we can meet and chat." And we did that. And what was interesting is, even though I was 95% sure the relationship would work, that just meeting up face to face just closed it. And as you say, that element is interesting.
And cemented it. And I think also, when people are talking to you and they're going to be trusting their life in your hands to a degree, i.e. all their money, all their savings, their investment, I spoke earlier about, the opportunity for scammers. And I'm not, Chris, I know you're not. But, if you're meeting someone for the first time, they're always going to be a bit dubious. Maybe they won't be. But of course, that face-to-face can't be. 100%. Yeah, it's not, a face-to-face is going to start to help, isn't it? It's another tick box. You can see that person. They are real. They're not lying where they are, it starts to build on that relationship, which is so super, super key.
I mean, if I was a digital
business
version, I'd pick a better avatar, to be honest. I mean, like the cut on the nose and all of that sort of stuff. So
that adds realism. That's what it's about.
Yeah, that's the Matrix doing a really good job. So what film is the worst technological film you've seen?
I don't know.
I'm thinking Sandra Bullock and The Net wasn't a great one. Do you remember that one?
Yeah, I do. Yeah. Where she got but so again, that's a kind of a scam thing. Cybersecurity. She had her identification stolen. But again, when you look at it, it's a bit kind of corny, but in a way, it's quite truthful, isn't it? It's happening all the time. I think they say every 2 seconds globally, someone has their identification copied, and utilized and stuff like that, which is a huge amount, which does mean probably for most of us, at some point, we will possibly have our identification stolen and utilized. I have in the past, and I am frugal about, monitoring everything about myself. I use things like Equifax and Experian, subscribe to those to make sure that if anyone tries to open an account, I know what they're doing, when they're doing it. And I can also keep an eye on my own credit scoring and stuff like that as well. But yeah, I mean, going back to your question, that one, but I think for me, the original Tron. Again, I know it's sci-fi.
A classic, though.
Classic, absolutely. Classic. But I kind of look at that now and I kind of think, where did they get the ideas from? I mean, we're nowhere near that point, are we? We're, that's still probably a dream in the future. There's some great films out there, and I'd be interested to see what your viewers and listeners think as well. What's their favourite film? And what?
Yeah, let us know. Let us know in the comments. I know Russ is monitoring that, and be sure to let us know. The other thing I was going to mention as well that I normally do at the start is we are interested in hearing your thoughts around what you'd like us to talk about on future shows. So what we normally try and do is keep it relevant to the guests we've got. But if there's any pertinent subjects you'd like to cover on any area of financial, I'm currently going through the student finance minefield because my daughter's going to university in September. Anything like that, let me know, and we're happy to cover it off. So, I mean, we're not doing well on these questions, David. We're only on number 2. But tell us a little bit about the work you do at Symbol. What does the work you do involve?
Yeah, so Symbol is basically a consultancy business that works with SMEs, small to medium-sized enterprises, some micro businesses as well, where we're helping them really formulate, a bit like yourself, where are they today? Where do they want to get to, and how are they going to get there? So people say to me, oh, is it coaching? Well, there's an element of coaching, but I call it roll my sleeves up as a consultant. I'm there to advise. I'm there to get my hands dirty and work with you and make the magic happen. And that to me is really important. Coaches are great. The reason I don't go down that coaching route any longer, I do a lot of mentoring, which is again very different, we can talk about, but I just think the coaching world's become quite tarnished in the business world. And I'm sorry, I know there'll be other coaches out there. I do some coaching, but unfortunately, some have ruined it for others. There's some fantastic coaches out there, and there really is. People I would highly recommend and, even work with myself, but there's also some bad examples of that as well.
I think the coaching world's interesting, isn't it? Because there's skills that hopefully you and I bring to the table that are coaching skills, but I wouldn't call myself a coach, and neither do you. And I think part of that is because, as you say, the term coach has now become too generic. It's just like anybody can be a coach. But what's your difference in terms of the sort of rolling your sleeves up, cold coaching and mentoring? Where do you see those sort of roles fit?
Yeah, so let's touch on mentoring first. A lot of people say to me, mentoring, and I say, look, the way I see mentoring is you're working with someone, taking them under your wing, helping them, supporting them, and in 9.9 times out of 10, you're doing it for nothing. You're looking after them. You're there to educate them. You're there to provide your experience and your knowledge to help them on their journey. And do you know what you get from that? It's called the feel-good factor. Yeah, that's what I love about mentoring. And I do a lot of mentoring because I work with a lot of universities where I will work with startup businesses or ideas, actually. It might even be a business at this time. And they want to take their idea forward. So I kind of take them under my wing and, work with them. Might be 1 or 2 at a time. It could be done in some small group mentoring sessions as well. But when
you know what? I mean, the interesting thing about that, we have a lot of clients going through this experience as well, and certainly at Cervello, we try and do a decent amount of this. If you've been lucky enough, and I know that we all work hard and we all put effort in, but if you've been lucky enough to launch, build, grow a business that has, you know, allowed you an element of financial independence and security, giving back is actually part of the puzzle, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. I think it's a big part of the puzzle, because we've got to give our next wave of entrepreneurs, and I'm not going to say young, because I know people that started their business, and I can give an example of this. 65 years old, was a mature student at a university, and he set up his first business after he finished his degree. And I said to him, "God, you know, what have you been doing?" He said, "I've had 44 gap years to get to this point." And, you know, anyone could start a business at any time in life. But typically the ones I tend to be working with are the younger generation, younger entrepreneurs who are on their journey. We need to help them. They're the ones that are going to be the future employers of the country. They're the ones that are going to be paying the taxes. And God, we need to pay some taxes back to get the deficit down for the country. So we all need to do our part. And for me, taking one or two, you know, it's a couple of hours a month. That's all it requires of your time. Just to be there as a sounding board, to answer a question, to be a shoulder to cry on, and more importantly, to be someone to celebrate when they hit the nail on the head. And that, to me, is what makes mentoring. The feel-good factor is the key. So in your question, mentoring is a big part of what I do because I love to do it. When it comes to the business, rolling my sleeves up, what's different? I really get integral into the business. I really get to understand. I don't come in to control or take over. That's their business. But I come in to be part of their team and try to achieve with them, but not by taking over in any way, for them to actually get the bits of the jigsaw in the right places and start to make the big picture and understand where they are, where they want to get to. And that might be working with someone like yourself, Chris, who's a financial advisor. That's not my area of expertise. And I never pretend it will be. I know a little bit, you know, and I might talk about a little bit, but then I would say speak to your accountant, speak to your financial advisor, speak to the tax professional, bring them in. So it's about teamwork.
I mean, every business owner I know is one of the sort of reasons behind successful business owners is they've got the ability to understand that they're not good at everything. They build a team around them that designed to deliver that response. I you know, part of my sort of giving back bit, and I think we spoke about this before, is I host a podcast with my daughter called The Kindness Project. And just the idea of that is effectively to share some of the stories of people doing amazing stuff in the world. And there's plenty of people doing amazing stuff in the world. So hopefully we'll never run out of stories. But I had the Kindness Project book. What I learned from interviewing, you know, 100 odd, you know, people doing amazing stuff over the last 3 to 4 years, on my desktop, about 50,000 words for about a year. Now, I should know better, David. I should know that actually accountability and having somebody tell me what to do in that aspect of my life was super important. But I didn't do it for long enough. And literally, I employed an editor for that book, probably start May. And we're now at a point where it's done. And you think that element, sometimes you forget that everybody needs accountability in other aspects of their life that they're not particularly strong at. And I don't think we should forget that, right?
Yeah, accountability is absolutely super important. You could be really good at what you do, but having someone there just to where you up to. And of course, if you haven't done it, they're not going to put you in the corner, make you stand with your nose against the wall with your hands on your head. Of course not. Yeah. But you feel a little bit guilty because you've made a bit of a...
social animals, we want to help it. Yeah, we've
made a bit of a promise. Yeah, no, I'll get it done next time I see you, etc. So, yeah, accountability is a big part. But for me also, it's bringing in the element of tech. Bear in mind, my background's technology. I still got a technology business as well. What I'm involved in, it runs out of South Africa. I look after kind of the UK and Europe. And you know, for me, it's how can we bring technology into a business to automate it, systemize it, and process it? Because these are things that can make sure things don't get forgotten. We all have processes in place for us as people, but having processes in place for things where we can use technology can streamline your operations, make things smoother, much more professional, cut costs, and in return, increase profits as well.
So what do you think? What do you think the most useful software hacks are in terms of making businesses more efficient? Because I look at my business and I know sort of on the marketing element, email automation software has been really amazing. Certainly our CRM system takes a lot of the pressure off. Cash flow we talked about earlier. What are the ones that you think every business should consider to make their processes more efficient?
So you've hit on a couple of them there straight away. Get a good CRM system. It doesn't matter the size of your business. Even if you're just one man band or a one lady band, a solopreneur working from home, get yourself a CRM system. Now, a CRM system doesn't have to be expensive, doesn't have to be complex. There's lots of great free ones out there. Some of them will come with limitations, what you can do with it, of course, but as you grow and scale, then you can upgrade. But something even like HubSpot, it's a free, off-the-shelf CRM system. In most cases, for a startup, it will be perfect. And as you need the extra add-ons, you can pay for the plugins, etc. You can expand it. So CRM system. But if you even don't want to do that, your CRM system can be something as basic as Outlook and just using the contacts and then just keeping notes in there as well. What is a CRM system good at? And I think it's quite important to say, well, it's not just a way of collecting names and numbers and email addresses and contact details. It's about conversations and recording that. Now, our brain can only remember so much. And if you're speaking to lots of people, it's just good to take a few notes, put them in there. Chris has got a daughter, and it could be just real basic stuff. But next time you have that conversation, oh, Chris, you was off traveling in July. How was that? What did you get up to? Where did you go? You said you were going to visit X, Y, and Z. Did you manage to do that? So it builds human conversation back into our conversation, which we may have forgotten about. So CRM, that's one of my top ones. Accounts packages, certainly cloud. So something like Xero, QuickBooks, Cashflow, they're all out there. I prefer Xero, it's my go-to place. Using something like Receipt Bank or an equivalent plugin, Dext as it's known these days as Receipt Bank, but scanning your receipts, that in itself, bookkeeping money saved is tremendous.
But you know what? Xero, I mean, we've been using Xero for probably about 5 or 6 years now. And just being able to, at the end of every month, to go, right, that's where we are. That's how much money we had come in. That's how much, because a lot of our income comes in from clients who retain our services. So pay us fees on a regular basis. That's where the retainers come in. That was the recurring income. That was new business. That's a really clear, that's the expenses. That's a really clear snapshot of where we are. That I think, as a business owner, that's got real power because it allows you to navigate forward in a really sensible way.
Superpower. It does concern me. Some businesses I will work with in the outset, one of my first questions is how do you manage your finances? So I'm not a finance expert. I bring the right people in, but I will get in place hopefully the right systems to get them on that path. And I say to them, do you know how much money you're owed? How much money you owe? What your liabilities are in such as VAT and other tax? And they go, well, no, my accountant does that. So you can't tell me today without getting out pen and paper or asking your accountant where the position of your company is. No, because I get it done every quarter. It's like you can't be sustainable as a business. You've got to be able to. This is the great thing about these systems, these cloud computing systems. You can press a button as long as the accurate information's been entered, which using things like Receipt Bank and automated processes, you can press a button and bump up on the screen. It spits out the numbers. Yeah. And you can then make informed decisions as a business owner. Can I afford to buy that piece of machinery or that bit of equipment, employ that person? If I employ that person, is the business coming through that's going to be sustainable to keep them employed? Yeah. It's such an important thing, and it's something I would say to all. But it's about taking that data and manipulating it and making it understandable. You haven't got to be an accountant to understand it. You need to know the basics, of course.
Yeah, 100%. So let's talk about the evolution of technology in business. What do you think? I mean, if we look back in the last 20 years, we never would have get. I feel like this could be an archive of our version of tomorrow's world where we get it completely wrong, David. But what do you think the future?
I think we're going to get it very wrong here because technology is growing at such a rapid rate. We could talk about something today, we could be talking 10 years, 20 years, and it could be there in about a month's time. I mean, look, the big thing everyone's talking about at the moment is the metaverse. And I do have sitting in the back of my mind alarm bells ringing. Is this something that's really going to take hold? Is this something that's really going to catch on? Yeah. Part of me kind of likes the idea, but part of me kind of hates it as well. I just think the metaverse does have a place. Billions of pounds, dollars, euros, whatever we're going to talk financial currency, are being poured into this now by big organizations because they need to be there. I think they're just spending tax money as well. So I think one of the big things, yes, is the metaverse. How is that going to impact us as business owners? Well, I think it's the way we're going to do business is where it's going to happen. So, you know, be it you're a business networker, you go out networking, you know, I don't think you're ever going to replace that face-to-face. Of course you're not. But what virtual networking has done, and let's call the metaverse the next stage of that, is I could be anywhere in the world and I can network in any world and I can grow my business and build my relationships wherever I am.
But this is the interesting thing, isn't it? You know, like, as you know, because because you're a part of the Avery Means business community, you know, having that technological hub that backs up the real life face-to-face stuff, they complement each other potentially, don't they? That's the reality of it. And I think, you know, any opportunity to speak to businesses worth its salt effectively does the face-to-face stuff, because that's really important, but also backs it up with the technology as well. And you think that's going to adapt to potentially a metaverse style environment, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think things like networking, yes, shopping, you know, we're going to get more immersed into our shopping experiences. You know, we know what's kind of there, what's possible, but you can go in and say, oh, well, let me try that dress on, or that, you know, suit, or whatever it's going to be. And of course, you can change the color of it and the style of it. And then you can, does it look right? It's like a virtual mirror, isn't it? So yeah, I think that is going to happen, that world. But for me, I think where we're going to see this go, I think email is going to be around forever and a day. But I think we're using email in a very different way. The messaging type systems are becoming much more popular because they're much more reactive. We don't get bombarded with as much rubbish in those kind of digital messaging systems because they're much more personalized. Video meetings are going to be much more popular, and the tools in our videos meetings are going to become a lot more usable as well. You know, they're being updated whether you're using Zoom, or whether you're using Teams or Google. You know, it doesn't matter. What we're finding is they're bringing in newer tools, new abilities to help us communicate better in a digital platform. That, I think, is the initial growth we're going to see quite quickly in the next 6 to 12 months is going to be in that conferencing world.
I mean, one thing, we use Zoom, and one thing that Zoom have done really well is just added a whiteboard. It's such a simple thing to do. And you go, I mean, the problem is when I first used it, I thought I was being really clever and I couldn't work out. I was in a Cervello meeting, so I had the guys from Cervello together. I couldn't work out how to turn it off. So that was a challenge. But actually just having that ability to go, because we are, I mean, the majority of us are visual learners and thinkers, aren't we? So the ability to draw a picture that tells a story is really exciting. But yeah, that, you know, it doesn't need to be technologically complicated to be an actually really useful communication tool. But yeah, so completely get that the metaverse. How do businesses adapt to this new and changing technology then?
I think for the smaller SME businesses, I wouldn't put your foot on the gas too quickly. Let things start to start. This is, by the way, to me, the metaverse is the VHS versus Betamax war. For those that are old enough to remember the two different types of cassette tapes, you know, the Betamax was by far the best out there, much more superior, and actually was adopted into the broadcast industry. The VHS was kind of the inferior product, but won the war. And of course, we all then started buying videos and, you know, renting videos on VHS format, regardless. Bit like the BSB and Sky war, you know, the squareals, if you remember them, much more technology better, much more superior, but the typical old analog round ones won the war. In fact, now it's all been integrated. But we're going to see this with the metaverse. We're going to see this exact argument. There's too many of these little pop-up metaverses. They're all battling each other, and there's no place for everything. We've got to have one platform, i.e., you know, it is like the internet, you know, of course you can go off to different places, but we need one platform that's succinct, one type of headset, you know, that's going to work if it's going to be a headset-based immersive technology. That's where I think we go. I do think we see the likes of the equivalent of what they were called Google Glass, which flopped, but I think we're going to see that coming around. Apple are working on theirs, so you better put on like a glasses rather than a big bulky headset. And I do think we will see, and I know lots of people are not going to like this, but we will see chips integrated into our hands to be able to basically using RFID to open things and close things, make payments. I mean, I have a ring here. So this is a ring, and this is an RFID ring, which opens up my car. And I don't wear it very often. I substitute for my wedding ring, which my wife does allow me to do, believe it or not. But it's handy because then I don't have to take a key with me. That is my key to the car.
Gotcha.
If my phone fails, I can just tap with that and it will open my car. So we're going to see a lot more of this sort of technology coming around. And I think also contact lenses as well. The technology is being worked on that we can put a contact lens in, and then that can give us visual overlays of what we're looking at and text messages in our eyes.
But as you say, with that evolution, you know, it's like we're still in the MySpace Friends Reunited world in terms of the. I mean, and what's interesting is those big technology providers are all going to want to play a part, aren't they? The Googles, the Facebooks, you know, they're all going to, the Apples are all going to want to sort of piece of that pie. It's just who's going to come out as the primary sort of technology. It'd be interesting to see. Couple of things that I want to talk about. I was reading on your website about STEMnet. Can you tell our audience a little bit about STEMnet and the work it does?
Yeah, so STEM is really interesting. So STEMnet is basically science, technology, engineering, maths is the STEM part of it. And I'm part of STEMnet, have been now for, I don't know, maybe a dozen years, something like that, 10 to 12 years. And what I do is I volunteer some of my time, along with 30,000 other STEMnet volunteers, where we'll work with typically secondary, but not always, but primary, secondary schools, also into further education such as colleges, and in some cases into university as well. And I come from a technology background, so my part of that is the technology part of STEM, and I'll go in there and I will share things like stories. It's about trying to educate and inform and get people interested in these areas of business, if you like.
And there's a big push to get women involved, girls involved.
Correct. Women in engineering and stuff like that, women in technology. It really kind of, for example, I'll go into a secondary school, I'll have, years 10 and 11 thinking about their career choices, where they're going to go. Are they going to set up their own business? Are they going to go and work in an organization? Are they going to go on to college and university? But just giving them an overview of what it is that I do in my businesses, what my journey's been like. And quite often the STEM clubs get formed, and it will be some real great fun stuff. And sometimes some of this stuff is just mind-blowing, but building rockets, and there's a competition to see who can get a rocket into space. So it has to get to a certain height and stuff like that to be, and it has to be able to film it, and then it has to come back down. And you must be able to capture it. And these are things that have been done in schools. So it's educating, but it's making it fun. And I say there's 30,000 plus STEM ambassadors. If anyone's interested in being a STEM ambassador, if you fit one of those boxes, science, technology, engineering, or maths, then just go on to stemnet.org. You can register on there. Someone get in touch with you. You can give as little as much time as you can afford. It could be an hour a month. It could be, a day a month. Really up to you.
But it goes back to that being that inspiration for the next generation.
Correct.
To support them to do really exciting, interesting stuff. I love the idea of that. And then sort of let's have a quick chat about Chatbox, because I know that you've got your own. I don't know what we call it, David. I on my notes I've got internet TV show, but I don't know what this is. I don't know what that is. So tell us a little bit about Chatbox. Please find a better name from it than it.
I'll explain a little bit about it.
Right.
So Chatbox was born during the pandemic. Myself and my fellow founder, Nick Luby. I've known Nick for many years. I know you know Nick very well as well. Yeah. And both Nick and I are speakers from stage. So we used to get up there, talk about, in my case, technology in business. Nick would talk about human communication. And of course, pandemic come and everything kind of locked down. There was no speaking from stage. Some of it reverted to a digital format, of course. But Nick and I had a bit of, spare time on our hands. We were sitting there having a conversation on a Zoom call with a coffee. And it was like, we need to do something. We need to inspire other businesses to share their stories. So what we did is we launched Chatbox Productions. And Chatbox is online. So we typically stream out to the major channels. So it's YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn Live, Twitter. And we were on Twitch until we got banned last week. Another story there. They just picked up something.
I've got to ask, what happened?
Oh, nothing. We just shared a link and they picked it up and they said that was, something that was going to be a cyber risk to others. And it was a link of someone's website that come on the show. So I'm just trying to get it reverted. It was a robot that kind of said, no, you can read no longer. So Chatbox is an unscripted live stream show. We just jump in every Thursday morning, 8 o'clock. We bring on, like yourself, Chris, in the past, we bring on business owners, not necessarily people that are well known or have done amazing things. We bring them on the show to talk a little bit about who they are, what they do, why they do it, the things that they've been up to, how they can help people, what they're looking for maybe from help from others as well, and inspire and educate people that, everyone that watches the show.
This is the real. This is what I love about this, right? It's one of those, and again, certainly we've done it with the podcast. We try and do it at Cervello. We certainly do it at Avery Means Business, and sort of during the lockdown, that's been a really good way to engage people and share small business stories, because we don't do it anymore, but we used to do every sort of Zoom meeting on Avery Means Business live on the page, which was always really interesting. But you just learn so much listening to other people's stories, don't you? And just like there's always that sort of glimmer of like, that's interesting, I could learn from that, in terms of just that human engagement. So tell me a little bit about the insights that you've had from interviewing people on Chatbox.
We've had some amazing people on the show. One, yourself, Chris, coming on, talking about, financial stability and getting prepared for later on in life and stuff like that. But we've had an array from different parts of the world. We've had guests from South Africa, from the Middle East, the Far East, into the US. We've had people from all around the world come onto the show. But there's a couple of shows that stand out for me. And one of the best shows from an entrepreneurial point of view, because obviously we're trying to inspire others to start their business journey or maybe consider going into business. But we had Professor Alan Barrell, 81 years old, come onto the show. Very influential, so many great stories to share, and really great. But on the flip side, on the same show, we had a 13-year-old entrepreneur who just started their first business, working from home, called Maya Tyler. And she came on to talk about her business. And she's a YouTuber. So we got from someone that's kind of, well, I'm going to, no disrespect to Alan here, but old school, everything's kind of face to face, and he's adapted to the digital world. He's had to, but someone that has created their business around YouTube and creating the content and sharing the content. So it was unreal to see the two ends of the spectrum and how two businesses could be so different, but both doing amazing things.
But again, that 13-year-old understands that communication style more implicitly than Alan or us or anybody else, because that's what she's been born into. Like YouTube as a brand building, marketing, communication tool is potentially amazing, isn't it? For
absolutely.
What was her business? What was it? Was it as a YouTuber, a content creator? And
so she was a makeup artist. So she was showing how to apply makeup, the best types of makeup, and then she was creating the content and actually showing how to do that. And she'd started out, but the confidence at that age, she was a little bit worried about coming on the show. We had the conversation beforehand. I don't blame her at 13 years old, but what a job she did. And actually the feedback was absolutely amazing. But then on the flip side, we had a really serious, a gentleman called Darren Smith, who come on and shared his story. He now runs an organization, or is part of an organization called the Andy's Man Group, which is all about typically men. So it's all based around men, but potentially will either commit suicide or have suicidal thoughts. And he came on the show and shared his story. And I will say it was one of the hardest shows that I've actually done, because it becomes so real. But one of the most inspirational shows that I've done, to see how someone had literally attempted at taking his own life and didn't succeed, through to how now he's come right the way throughout the other side, and he's now running these clubs to help others in similar situations. And it was a lump in the throat type of show at times, but very, very inspirational. And it was great to have him on there and hear that whole journey, and hats off to him for sharing that as well.
It's funny enough, we've had a couple of people in the Kindness Project actually that have explored that area. So there was one guy called Chris Haycock. Funny enough, he runs a technology business. And he went from being in the forces to leaving the forces and becoming homeless, through to sort of getting back on track and then sort of building these businesses, moving from there. And that was a really interesting sort of conversation about mental health, you know, how we go through these periods, you know, and again, there's a lot more in terms of, you know, being sort of closeted and looked after when you're in the army, to coming out and going, the world's your oyster, but what do I do with it? Because I'm used to that environment, you know, that's that sort of impact. And then, so, I mean, certainly I will make sure in the notes we put a link to the podcast, Chris, because I definitely recommend you do that. And then the other one was a guy called Ollie Smith. Now, Ollie, I know through Cervello, because he's the editor, he used to be the editor of one of our financial trade press magazines. And I've known him for years. Funny enough, my oldest daughter did work experience with him and decided that number one, she definitely wants to be a journalist, and number two, she doesn't want to work in financial journalism. So 2 lessons learned there. But he did a really interesting and brave thing where he talked about the fact that, you know, men in particular don't talk about some of these mental health issues. And in one episode of this quite straight, you know, financial magazine, talked about his own mental health issues and encouraged people in our profession to do the same. And he came on the podcast and just was really open and shared, and you know, and actually I think talking about that stuff and talking about the fact that, you know, we go through challenges as business owners, as men and women, you know, that we're not in isolation, and we should be more open and honest about those areas, was a real eye opener to me. It was so good. But yeah, I think, you know, if we can be more vulnerable and honest at times and talk about some of those issues, I think that's important, right?
Yeah, 100% important. And I think, you know, one thing I will say here is that, you know, if you're running a business, like I work with lots of young startups with an idea, they might even start their business, and I don't sugarcoat it. I will say from the outset, I'm actually going to a university later. I'm doing a startup business course. So these are, or want to be in business when they leave university. And I will say to them, as I say to every group that I speak to,
there will be tough times.
Absolutely. Don't think this is going to be a journey of, you know, sit back and enjoy it and, you know, be laughing and smiling every day. Because I can tell you now, it's going to be tough. And if you're not prepared for a few challenges along the way, if you're not prepared for the ups and the downs, which will happen, then maybe this is not for you. If you want that comfort of a paycheck coming in every month in your bank account, nothing to worry about, you'll have your own other worries and issues to deal with, but then running a business is not for you. Go and work for somebody. And I think it's really important that we don't sugarcoat it so much. But on the flip side, there will be great days. You're going to have lots of laughs. You're going to have great people around you. You're going to build some amazing relationships and have some fantastic conversations. You know, there is the good, and to be honest, the good outweighs the bad. Of course it does.
But you know what? I mean, for me, and again, I think 13 years running the business now, I'm sort of unemployable. But for me, it's all about freedom of choice. It's about choosing who I work with, choosing how I spend my time, choosing. And again, I probably didn't have that at the start of the business, because all I had to do was survive. But as your business continues to evolve, you go, this is about freedom. It's about choosing what to do with both your time, your money, and who you choose to spend time with. And I think that's super powerful.
And I always ask, certainly from a startup perspective, you know, what are your ambitions? What are your aims in the next 12 to 18 months? What is it you want to get from your business? And they say, well, if they've been working with somebody, I want that, you know, that freedom. I want to be able to decide what I do, when I do it, and not have to be accountable and tell somebody. So the time issue. Okay, that's one. So time is always a big one. Flexibility. And I say, okay, what else? Well, I'd like to earn a good living out of it. I want to earn more that I'm earning working for somebody. Okay, get that. And there's a few other things that can't, but they're the typical two at the top. 12 to 18 months later, have the same conversation. How's things going? They say, do you know what? I've got less time than I've ever had, and I'm earning less money than I've ever earned, because they're in that cycle of building and scaling their business. So they're pumping all their money back in and working super hard to build it. And I always say that is your 12 to 18 months. You know, that's going to be tough for that period. But after that, as you know, Chris, it does get easier. You get the stability there. You get your clients on board. You get the referrals and recommendations. Your marketing starts working for you.
You build a reputation as well.
Reputation is key. Yeah,
that's 100%. David, thank you for today. I really enjoyed our chat, as I knew I would. I need to go back and watch the Matrix films, but I'm going to ignore the last one. Where can people I suppose two questions rolled into one. Number one, you know, what sort of people would you like to get in touch with you, and who can you help, and where can people find out a bit more about you?
Yeah, okay. So I've got actually an ask. If you are a business owner, and I'm typically looking at technology type companies, and you're thinking of possibly an exit strategy or investment, I'm interested in those organizations at the moment. I'm looking to take on a couple of IT companies. Not too worried about location, but typically I'm Essex based, so something within a reasonable distance. If you're in kind of another part of the world, that might not be so much of an interest. But where can I help people? Anyone that's got a business that wants to scale it and implement technology into their business, be held accountable, and look at really taking their business to the next level, maybe for an exit strategy, maybe they want to sell it, maybe they want to pass it on to their family, their children, maybe they just want to earn a good lifestyle living, or maybe they want to become the next Apple. Then I'm looking, you know, really to have a conversation with those, no obligation, just to see if we're a fit, because it's got to work both ways as well. So that, I suppose, is the ask, and how I can help people to really take their business to the next level. How can people get in touch? The easiest way is simboc.com/David-Bell. And that will take you to a bio page. And on there are all my contact details, a little bit more about me and my journey to date. But more importantly, if you want to connect with me on LinkedIn, there's the button for that. If you want to other social media chats, you can, WhatsApp, phone numbers, the lot. So that's the easiest way.
Fab. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you, everybody, for watching Cervello Live. We really appreciate you spending the time today. Have a lovely day. Have a lovely remainder of the week, and we'll see you on Cervello Live next week. Bye.